heal her so she can live. Now that's in faith, right? There was no question of whether or not he could do it. It's not, can you come and heal my daughter? It's, come lay your hands on her, she'll be healed. Okay? Now, let's do some back history here. Jarius, yes, was the president of the local synagogue. This is kind of a high-ranking official in the area at the time. And this is right shortly after Jesus has healed the man with the withered hand on Sabbath at the synagogue. So Jarius was probably one of the ones that was involved in the group that was like, hey, he shouldn't be doing that, that's doing work on the Sabbath. This is the same, so this is not comfortable for Jarius, right? Because Jarius is now dealing with a crisis at his home. And it's making him challenge his entire outlook, his entire self-plan, his entire everything. Because all of a sudden, the person who I'm quite positive was saying the day before, or very shortly before, we got to get rid of this guy, is now going, I got to go find him, because only he can help my kid. This is not an easy step. This is going against his career. This is going against his friends. This is going against everything that he took for granted. He's going to step out and say, I need Jesus, even though it may change everything about who he is. Losing my mic here. All right, so you will find that emergencies have a way of doing that to people. Tragedies, things happening in people's lives. How many of you know somebody who has went through a traumatic event and it has changed everything about them? All of a sudden, the person who is the most unchristian person you know, all of a sudden is going, hey, you got to come to church because they went through this traumatic event. Or sometimes the exact opposite. They go through a traumatic event, they're very, Christian people, and all of a sudden they're like, forget God. This is where Jarius is in his life. He's in one of these traumatic events. He's in where it's going to change everything about him because he doesn't have any other choice. So, now, his only child, his 12-year-old daughter, is dying. And I'm sure at this point he's done everything he knows to do. Right? He's prayed about it. He's done whatever the home remedy of the time. They really didn't have doctors. He's probably even asked the Pharisees to come over and anoint his daughter and pray over her to help her be healed. But she's still dying. And this preteen girl is starting to get to the place where it's past worried. The breathing's belabored. She's real hot. She's starting to turn blue. We got to do something. And it's kind of interesting because I think it's funny where the placement of I think it's going to fall off here. Okay, placement of the age of the girl I think is amusing because those of you who are parents, my children aren't currently teenagers yet. But those of you who are dealing with that, how many of you think your children basically are starting to, kind of dead to you when they hit the teenage years? They stop talking to you. They don't want to get out of bed, and the only activity that you ever see them do is this. Are you going to get up and do something? No, okay. So this is he's starting to lose his child here. And it kind of hits close to home, too, this story, because I personally am a school teacher. And Jarius is the teacher of the synagogue. And I have two young daughters, 9 and 6, and Jarius has his only daughter, which is 12 here. So it kind of hits close to home on me. So, Jarius, I'm sure, at this point had, he was a teacher of the law, so he knew the stories of the Old Testament. And with those stories, there's one that stood out in my mind, the story of Abraham and Isaac. Abraham had his son there on the altar about to die. And he prays, this is your will, God, I'm willing to do it, but is this your will? And all of a sudden, the angel holds his hand and pulls back, and there's a lamb to deliver. Isaac, a ram actually, I think it was, a lamb. But Jairus is wondering, where's my God coming through for me? But God did come through for him. Because the lamb was there, right? The lamb was in town. He could go get the lamb. He just had to go do it. Okay? So, now, here he goes. Here goes Jairus. Talking to his daughter. I'm going to go get Jesus. I'm going to bring him here so that you can be saved. I'm going to bring the person that can heal you. I don't care what is going to happen. And I imagine Jairus taking off in his temple regalia, tassels flying behind him. You've seen the pictures of what they wore. And coming up to this crowd, because it says this crowd is with him, following Jesus. And the crowd shows up. And Jairus is running up, and he hits the crowd. And of course, he still has some authority with these people. So when Jairus shows up, they're like, oh. And he's like, yeah, let me through. I got to get to Jesus. And then here goes Jairus. Gets to Jesus, and I see him just diving headfirst into the ground and grabbing his ankles. You got to come help me save my child. You got to help. And that's not really a comfortable position, I'm guessing, for Jairus. Or imagine what the crowd's response is to that. Here's this guy laying on the ground in the temple regalia who, if you've been around at all, isn't real happy with Jesus. Okay? But the nice thing about this is, one of the things that I find very refreshing about Jairus here is this is a father who is involved in an emergency involving his children. There's a lot of us guys, myself included more than once, who have, the child comes out with a cut finger and oh, your finger's cut. Go see your mom, she'll take care of that. Or, oh, honey, why is the child crying? Could you come get this kid? Jairus is involved. Jairus is there. Jairus is doing what he has to, what he can for his family, for what needs to have to take place. And it's kind of scary with today's society. Today's society, we have more and more families who are split. And as I was going through this, I found some information about statistics about split families. Now, let me preface this real quick. If you were in a split, if you're a split family, or if you're in a position where you're separated or whatever, this does not mean your child has no hope, because these are scary statistics. This means you need to make sure you're involved in a church, in a place where there's godly men and women who can help take up some of that slack. Because there's only so much, and I can't imagine raising my kids by myself. I can barely do it with two of us, let alone with one. So I give you all the credit in the world, okay? But here's the statistics. Compared to children in a traditional family where their natural parents are married to each other, here's the statistics. Children are 8 times more likely to go to jail. 5 times more likely to commit suicide. 20 times more likely to have behavioral problems. 20 times more likely to be a rapist. Wow. 32 times more likely to run away from home. 10 times more likely to do drugs. 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. 33 times more likely to be badly abused. 73 times more likely to be fatally abused. 1/10 is likely to get an A in school. An average of 44% higher mortality rate, and an average of 72% lower standard of living. That's from the Garbage Generation. I can give you the author if you want to find out about the book. Those are some scary statistics. So, one of my side challenges is here is if you are in a family that is still together, fight every step of the way to make sure that stays together, because that can make just amazing amount of difference in the kids, right?
Amen.
Now, let's continue with the story. I get sidetracked. Verse 23 says he pleaded fervently. He wanted his little girl to be restored. More than anything else in the world, more than anything that he could do, he wanted his child to be okay. And if you look at James chapter 5, verse 16, part B, it says, the earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. He was earnest. He got in there. He was willing to risk his job, willing to risk his friends. He was willing to risk everything. And how many of us pray earnestly nowadays? We have a tendency to pray lackadaisically. We have a tendency to just kind of, all right, God, thanks for everything, and how much more was he willing to do for us if we were willing to put the effort, the earnestness into our prayers? He prayed in faith, and it says, verse 23, please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live. And what was Jesus' reply? Jesus went with them. Yes, I'll do that. And the crowd followed. Now, I don't know about you, but do crowds move quickly?
Red Rock concert.
Now, this is a man who's earnest, who's scared for his daughter's life, who's worried, who doesn't know whether or not he's left in time. And the crowd comes with. I don't know about you, but I'd be a little bit of, get out of my way, we've got to go now. So this crowd is moving along, and Jesus is going with them, with the crowd and with everything. And so they're kind of moving at the crowd's pace. And this woman has the audacity to cut in line. Let's just call it that. She cut. He had already got him. He's coming to heal my daughter. And Jesus stops dead in his tracks and goes, who touched me? Who touched me? I don't know about you, but if this was my daughter and she's dying, I don't care who touched you. I really don't care. And I think I probably would have looked around and said,
Her over there.
do you see the amount of people around here? Well, let's go. We do not have time to be waiting for you to figure out who touched you. But Jairus, so Jairus is probably about ready to lose his mind, for lack of a better